There are stories so dark, so unsettling, that even the publishers who created them tried to bury them. Comics that pushed boundaries too far. Comics that governments, schools, and even entire nations declared too dangerous to be read. These aren't just tales of heroes and villains. They're windows into what society feared the most. It begins in the 1950s. The golden age of superheroes was fading, and darker stories were taking center stage. Horror comics, crime comics, tales filled with blood, corruption, and unspeakable acts. And they were popular. Too popular. Parents panicked. Politicians raged. Doctors warned these comics were corrupting children. A psychologist named Dr. Frederick Wortham published a book, Seduction of the Innocent. In it, he claimed Batman and Robin promoted homosexuality. That Wonder Woman encouraged rebellion against traditional gender roles. That horror comics directly led to juvenile delinquency. Congress took notice. Televised hearings grilled comic publishers. And soon after, the industry created the Comics Code Authority, a strict set of rules that banned almost everything controversial. No excessive violence. No zombies. No werewolves. No vampires. No drugs. And absolutely no questioning of authority. Heroes had to be flawless. Villains had to be punished. And any nuance, any grit, was erased. But some creators fought back. And that's where the most banned and censored comics in history emerged. From the books they tried to erase. One of the most infamous? Tales from the Crypt. Its grotesque stories of corpses, killers, and the macabre terrified adults. The Comics Code banned it completely. The publisher, EC Comics, was gutted. Entire genres of horror and crime vanished overnight. Then came the 1970s. The world had changed. Drug abuse was rampant. Marvel dared to tell a Spider-Man story about it. Peter Parker's best friend, Harry Osborn, nearly dies from an overdose. It was raw. It was real. It was necessary. But the Comics Code forbid any mention of drugs. Marvel published it anyway. The code lost credibility. And slowly, the walls of censorship began to crack. Still, even after the code's grip weakened, some stories were too much. The Killing Joke, Batman's darkest tale, was censored in many schools for its disturbing treatment of Barbara Gordon. Sandman faced bans for its blend of sexuality, death, and religion. Even Mouse, the Pulitzer-winning graphic novel about the Holocaust, was pulled from classrooms in parts of the United States as recently as 2022. And yet, each time a comic is banned, its legend only grows stronger. Because what's forbidden often becomes the most sought after. Looking back, censorship tells us less about the comics and more about the world around them. Horror comics weren't banned because they were evil. They were banned because society feared children would grow up questioning authority. Spider-Man's drug story wasn't controversial because of the drugs. It was controversial because it showed a hero failing to save a friend. Mouse wasn't censored because it was inaccurate. It was censored because it forced people to confront uncomfortable truths. These stories prove one thing. Comics are powerful. Powerful enough to scare governments. Powerful enough to inspire rebellion. Powerful enough to outlast censorship itself. Because no matter how many times they're banned, burned, or buried, the stories always return. And their impact grows stronger with every attempt to silence them. The underground fight against censorship didn't happen in boardrooms or courts. It happened in basements, on street corners, and in the hands of artists who refused to play by the rules. If the Comics Code Authority wanted to sanitize the medium, these creators were determined to drag it back into the dirt. It was the late 1960s. America was boiling. Vietnam. Civil rights struggles. The counterculture was exploding. And with it came underground comics. Notice the X. That letter wasn't an accident. It meant raw, explicit, and uncensored. Artists like Robert Crumb, Spain Rodriguez, and Gilbert Shelton filled their stories with sex, drugs, politics, and satire. No superheroes saving the day. No happy endings. Just the raw chaos of real life. These books were banned almost everywhere. Too obscene. Too radical. Too un-American. But fans found them anyway. Sold under counters. Passed hand to hand. Hidden in record stores. The establishment couldn't stop them. And their influence paved the way for darker, grittier comics in the mainstream decades later. In the case of Miracle Man, if underground comics were an artistic rebellion, Miracle Man was a nuclear bomb. Originally a British superhero, the character was resurrected in the 1980s by a young writer named Alan Moore. But this wasn't a simple hero revival. This was deconstruction on the most brutal level. Miracle Man was a god among men. And the story asked, what happens when a god decides he's tired of humanity's flaws? Cities are destroyed. Massacres unfold. And in one infamous scene, childbirth is depicted graphically and unflinchingly. The book was pulled from shelves, censored for years, tangled in lawsuits that locked it away from readers. When it finally resurfaced, its reputation had only grown. Today, Miracle Man is hailed as one of the most daring comics ever written. But for years, it was forbidden fruit. Even a legend like Conan the Barbarian wasn't safe. Marvel's savage Sword of Conan magazine pushed the boundaries of violence and sexuality. It dodged the comics code by publishing in magazine format, which gave creators more freedom. Still, the censorship hammer fell. Covers were altered, dialogue toned down, entire scenes redrawn to remove nudity or gore. Yet fans sought out the original versions, the unfiltered vision of sword and sorcery in all its blood-soaked glory. Now look at modern censorship. You'd think by the 21st century, censorship would be gone. But even now, comics face bans. Titles like Saga were pulled from digital platforms for explicit content. Sex Criminals was blocked for sale in multiple countries. And once again, school boards continue banning graphic novels like Mouse, Fun Home, and Persepolis. It shows the battle never really ends. The struggle between creators and gatekeepers continues, shifting targets, but never disappearing. Censorship always says more about fear than about the story itself. And comics, with their mix of words and pictures, have always been the perfect medium to challenge those fears. When a comic is banned, it doesn't vanish. It becomes legend. A whispered recommendation. A secret passed from fan to fan. And in that secrecy, it becomes more powerful than ever. The thing about banned comics is they never truly die. If anything, censorship gives them more power. The forbidden becomes irresistible. The silenced story echoes louder. And the legacy of these censored works still shapes the comic book world today. Every time a comic was pulled from shelves, it lit a fire in readers and creators. They learned a lesson. Stories are dangerous because they matter. When Seduction of the Innocent tried to bury horror comics, it only pushed future generations to demand scarier, bloodier tales. When Mouse was banned, it didn't erase history. It made more readers curious to discover it. When Saga and Sex Criminals were censored, fans rallied harder to support the creators. Censorship backfires. It always has. Because if a story can shake people to their core, then it's worth fighting for. Let's face it. Comics would have never grown up without their battles against censorship. The industry went from funny books for kids to complex, mature storytelling because creators refused to back down. We got darker Batman stories, cosmic sagas where gods died, gritty heroes who made us question morality itself. All of that traces back to one thing: resistance. Every banned comic carved a path for deeper, bolder stories to exist. Even now, comics are still under attack. Not because they're dangerous, but because they're powerful. School boards ban them. Governments restrict them. Platforms hide them. But history shows one truth. The more you try to silence a comic, the more readers will seek it out. Because comics are more than entertainment. They're rebellion in ink and paper. They're mirrors society sometimes doesn't want to look into. The legacy of banned comics isn't about the books that disappeared. It's about the voices that couldn't be silenced. From EC horror to Mouse. From underground comics to Saga. Every act of censorship only proved one thing. You can ban a comic. But you can't ban an idea.